What does it mean to build a legacy? It means building something that lasts beyond any one moment. Something that echoes long after the final buzzer sounds. Something far more meaningful than any one victory. Legacy is the impact you leave on others, teammates, fans, and the city where it all played out. It takes selflessness, hard work, and of course skill to be great, to be remembered, to become a legend. The Chicago Bulls Ring of Honor celebrates those icons who did just that. The changemakers, champions and stars who'll forever live in franchise lore. Today, the Bulls recognize the class of 2025. 6 legends who represent the best of the Bulls on and off the court. Those who demonstrate what it means to be a Chicago Bull. You remember the names, the ones etched in Bulls history. Turn back the clock to the 1970s, when Norman was stormin', the heartbeat of the Bulls in those early years. Fierce, fearless, and unrelenting. 48 minutes of intensity.
You talk about gritty, hard-nosed. He was that type of player that put his hard hat on and he went to work. He had that pride about him to stop his opponent.
Norm Van Lier's defense set the tone. His passion set the standard.
He would dog you, he would fight you. He was concerned about one thing only, and that's winning.
Then there's the first three-peat, the moment that put the Bulls on another level. There's the man with the goggles from Georgia, whose tenacity, rebounding, and physicality were secret ingredients in the Bulls' winning formula.
Horace was the only one who played 94 feet.
His strengths complemented Michael and Scotty.
He's a double-double machine. He just played with a hard emotion. Horace is the spirit of the team.
The steady hand, the clutch shooter, the lifelong Bull, whose loyalty to the franchise spans more than 40 years.
When you play with Michael Jordan, you better have tough skin. More importantly, you better have his trust. And John Paxson had both of those things.
He had a determination about him. He was an accurate shooter. He carried himself with a certain sense of, I'm going to challenge you.
He was highly conditioned, he had toughness, he was trusted when the game was on the line.
The soft-spoken 7-footer with the funky jump shot, who taught the team what it took to become champions.
The Detroit Bad Boys were our nemesis. Bill fit the bill. He was the enforcer, and he took care of the back of the lane.
Bill was that nail that we needed to get over the hump. We called him Teach, because he always teaches.
And the unsung hero during the first three-peat, Johnny Bach.
His defensive element, it set a tone for the team. He had that attitude of, just don't pressure the ball, take the ball.
A tactical mastermind whose Doberman defense terrorized opponents.
He had energy, enthusiasm. He loved basketball.
And of course, the voice that generations of Bulls fans grew up watching the game with.
Jordan a drive, hangs, fires, scores! He scores!
He's in it too.
When you're a local broadcaster, you are the voice of that team.
Neil painted a picture, just an incredible picture of a game.
This is a guy who carried himself with class and dignity. When you're a people person like that, people respect that, and people appreciate that.
For the second time in Bulls history, we open the doors to the Chicago Bulls Ring of Honor to enshrine those legends where they belong, in Bulls history forever. A place to honor those who shaped the past and inspire the future. This is the Chicago Bulls Ring of Honor. This is where legends live.
Horace Grant, I'm going to tell you about Horace. Horace Grant is a Hall of Famer.
Horace, on another team, would have been a perennial all-star.
You say who's the third best player on that team? Horace Grant is the third best player on that team.
4 ring ceremonies, 3 when you're on the receiving end. Bill Jackson told us just a few moments ago, he warned you about maybe that taking place.
The night that we drafted Horace, we drafted Scottie Pippen.
We started looking at tape, and Jerry Krause has a great eye for talent, and he had Scottie Pippen long before everybody else.
After we drafted Horace that night and Scottie, there was a huge celebration in the draft room. Like, this is the start of something really special.
I was sitting in the office, and Horace came walking in. We looked at his body and said, can we see him filling out, getting stronger? Because the game was different back then. The game was so much played in the paint, and you need to be able to establish yourself, be able to hold your space in there.
Horace came in the league probably at 215, 6'10", wiry, very athletic, poor of sight. Eventually ended up having to wear heavy-duty eye gear.
I got to see he and Scottie come into the league together. I got to see both of them grow. It was fun to watch Horace grow because he grew into a very reliable, trustworthy teammate.
We tried to take a look at how he would fit, and we thought, okay, we have Michael and we have Pax, and now we get Scottie and we get Horace. We started getting the pieces of a championship level team.
3 on 2, it's Grant from Jordan, it counts for foul.
There's a lot of great positives playing with great players, winning championships, succeeding. But the negative of playing with somebody like Michael Jordan is that you get overlooked. The spotlight shines so brightly on that one person. The one who, to me, got overlooked the most among the Bulls championships was Horace Grant.
Definitely he was overshadowed, but not by people that watched the game. The fans that were there and the coaches, he wasn't overshadowed.
Tremendous athlete, incredibly conditioned, and the stronger Horace got, the more confident he got, and the more confident we got in him.
He's a power forward, he's a double-double machine.
You could defend just about any position on the floor, 1 through 5.
Guys could actually guard their man one-on-one, no switching. Horace was like the spearhead of that.
The reason that team won is that was the greatest defensive team in the history of the NBA.
We had their hunger to go out and win.
My first year here, the year Michael retired, we won 55 games. What happened was Scottie and Horace really carried the team.
That year, he averaged 15 points a game and made the All-Star team. He was instrumental in Orlando beating us in the series when Michael came back.
You go back and see the way the Bulls played. Horace Grant was the only one who played 94 feet.
Yeah, there's no question we were a big 3. But then the next year when Horace left, things started to slip. And that was because we were missing a key ingredient to our team, and that was Horace.
Michael's the heart, Scottie's the backbone, and I would say, Horace is the spirit of the team.
I go back to this all the time. The strengths of the individuals have to complement each other. Horace's strengths complemented Michael and Scottie.
When you had Scottie and Michael, basically you erased the 2-man and you erased the 3 guy. So you knew you were going to basically win those 2 matchups. You need to win 3 matchups with your starting group.
Because of Horace, Michael and Scottie could play a certain defensive style.
He could run like a gazelle. He could change ends of the floor, trap, cover back, and protect the basket when we needed it.
His activity was great. He could block shots. He played above the rim. He developed a 15-foot jump shot that was accurate. And he was the front of a zone press that we played after free throw situations.
Everyone knows he has one of the greatest assists in Chicago Bulls history. He had the ball, and he's the one that flipped it out to Paxson for a 3-point shot.
Do you believe this?
He just played with hard emotion, didn't care about stats, didn't care about how many points he scored. He was just whatever the coach needed, whatever Phil needed, whatever the team needed, he was willing to do.
Phil was tough on him because he had to show the other players that, I'm not going to let people get away with stuff. I'm going to hold players accountable. He was tough on Horace, but it made Horace stronger.
Inside Horace Grant for the slam.
He never took shortcuts in anything. He's the first one in the weight room, the last one to leave, and he was a great role model.
Because he developed into a really good player, that allowed us to trade Charles Oakley to the Knicks for Bill Cartwright. And I think history has proven that that was a great trade. Horace, his 7 years with the Bulls was really special.
The word I would use with Horace would be joyful. He had a lot of joy about him when he played.
Yes, he wasn't the first option, wasn't the second option, but he really loved the game and wanted the team to win. So even though I was a new guy, he was there and he was helping me, giving me advice to help the team win. And to me, that's a true sign of a leader. And you put Horace on another team, and he's going to be that guy.
He's a guy that his heart's on his sleeve. He's got the biggest heart. He'll do anything. He made tremendous sacrifices for these championship runs.
I spent some time with Horace. He was doing work for the NBA, and I just said, this is crazy. How can we not have Horace part of our organization? And so I said to Horace, we really want to bring you back. He was really excited. When I told him that he was being inducted to our Ring of Honor, he said he was speechless. And I said, well, that tells me everything about who you are.
When I talk about Horace, he's a guy who would do anything for his teammates. You know, he would give an arm for a teammate if you needed. And those are the kind of guys that you consider family.
And to watch you grow, not only the player you are, but the man you are.
I know it wasn't easy, but you weathered the storm, and now you are here. The Chicago Bull Ring of Honor is very well deserved, my friend, my brother, my heart. Love you, congratulations, a job well done.
Johnny Bach, wow, his name just touches my heart.
Well, Johnny Bach was such an integral part of our coaching staff.
He had a carriage about him. He had a mental capacity for the history of the game.
He had energy, enthusiasm. He loved basketball.
I actually met him in 1972. He was one of the assistant coaches on the U.S. Olympic team. And then when I got the Bulls job, I needed some mentors to help me learn how to coach, how to do everything necessary to build a team.
Phil obviously gets all the credit for being one of the greatest coaches of all time. But then we had two other coaches, Tex Winter, and Johnny Bach had a long history in college and the NBA.
The funny story is people that didn't know the assistant coaches on the team thought that Johnny was Tex and Tex was Johnny because Johnny wore cowboy boots and he wore a bolo tie.
Phil wasn't the only voice all the time. Tex had the offense, Johnny had the defense.
Bulls defense back in those days when Horace and Michael and Scotty were, pressing and they were aggressive.
I think his defensive element, it set a tone for the team.
Johnny Bach, yes sir, the architect of the Doberman defense here in Chicago.
He had that attitude of, just don't pressure the ball, take the ball, turn it around and score.
He was tough-minded. I mean, he wanted you to take defensively the challenge against your opponent.
He made it as sometimes painfully aware that we had to do our jobs and it wasn't going to be easy.
Pass to Horace Grant. He's got it down. By Grant to Jordan. Oh, what trick.
It was very encouraging of Horace Grant, who he spotted in a scouting video, and Johnny took him under his wing.
That was a big part of Johnny Bach's defense, is having some forwards like Horace Grant be able to trap and then be able to get back to your man and not miss a beat.
People don't understand of what coaching really is all about, that Johnny could reach Horace, maybe on a level that I couldn't.
One day, prior to practice, Johnny said, let me give you a little hint. Let me call in Horace and see what Horace has to say. So he calls in Horace. Well, Coach Jackson here needs the guy that he'd come in the locker room at halftime or timeout and say, you guys better get going. Horace, get yourself going. Does that agree with you, Horace? Yes, sir. I agree to that.
He had a whole different role in the way he connected with the players as opposed to being the head coach.
He didn't mess around in terms of words. He'd come at you directly.
We might be running some lines, and a guy might miss a line. And Johnny goes, miss the line, let's do it again, or whatever. And the player would look at him and say, well, you know, Coach, he said, don't get mad at me. You're the one that missed the line, not me.
He didn't give you many breaks. If the player was over there sitting there and maybe complaining about being a little fatigued or something, Johnny wasn't going to hear it.
He was hard on guys. He held everybody accountable on the floor, but it was always in a caring way.
Johnny is a Navy guy, grew up in the military. Military so important to him.
He wasn't afraid to talk about it. He referenced it often.
We would start the year, he would play the opening scene from A Few Good Men, and he would say, I want you to watch precision. We're not going to get beat because we're sloppy or undisciplined.
We took that mindset, being assassins, being killers. You know, that's who we were. He was a big part of turning that mentality around.
For me, it was really neat to have a coach like that. Concepts that he brought in helped me as a player and helped me adjust to Chicago.
Johnny was able to like integrate it, like, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up for your teammates? And that was a big part of who he was.
An assistant for 11 seasons with the Bulls, he was a defensive specialist. 50 years in coaching, Johnny Bach.
He's a legendary coach. It's not just the players. You have to recognize everybody who's involved. And defense was our calling card.
He was just such a good human being. I know he would be really proud to be part of this Ring of Honor class.
Down one. Michael against Russell, 12 seconds. 11, 10. Jordan a drive. Hangs. Fires. Yes! He scores! The Bulls lead!
What makes him the best in the broadcast business? The voice.
3 seconds. He lays it up. He got it! The Bulls win! The steal! Got it! Saves it to Tony! He runs it again!
You knew the voice before you knew the name.
He scores! The Bulls lead 87-86.
A sound that filled our homes, our radios, our cars, our memories.
Russell looking, got it to Stockton. Stockton, screen and roll.
You didn't have to see the game to feel it. You only had to listen.
To Michael, 3, 2, Michael, firing!
Because when the Bulls tipped off,
the Bulls win the tip and go to work.
There he was, Neil Funk.
He painted a picture, just an incredible, incredible picture of a game.
Nobody knew the game more. Nobody said it better.
Bulls and the Supersonics coming your way after this on the Bulls Radio Network.
He moderated it, he paced it. He was a person that liked to do what he was doing. It was a joy to him.
Miller back to KJ, running right, darts inside, blocked by Horace, picked up by Miller, it's over.
The rhythm, the timing,
DJ for 3, come on!
the tone,
oh my!
the precision.
I had the Michael, 3 seconds, 2.
The soundtrack of greatness.
When he looks at the crowd, at the buzzer, this crowd is stunned.
Ask anyone, and they'll tell you, Neil wasn't just a voice. He was the voice.
You're a local broadcaster. You are the voice of that team. So when people watch, you're telling them what's going on.
They need to win to force a Game 7.
You're telling them the stories, who these guys are.
Thumbs up, I'll be ready.
Your voice is what these people are hearing.
Michael in traffic to Kerr, 15-footer.
The storyteller of an era. For the greatest moments etched into Bulls history.
Bulls win! They do it, the drive for 5.
It was Neil Funk behind the mic.
The history of this franchise, from championship number 2 through 6, it was all Neil. I mean, that's when Neil's iconic voice really came to life.
For nearly 3 decades with the Bulls, he turned plays into memories and memories into history. There were the championship game winners.
Paxson for 3! Yeah!
MJ's return.
Michael and Scotty, the 4th time they've done it.
And the rise of a hometown hero.
Rose crosses over the fadeaway.
As eloquent as Derek was, why don't we let him interview us?
You know what? You know, we brought Neil back. He was in ice in Florida, so it's great having him.
Thousands of games called alongside numerous Bulls icons. But yet, he never sought any attention. The consummate professional, who for many of us was the blueprint for how to do this job.
You don't realize you're away from your family a lot. You're on the road. It was just nice to have a presence like Neil.
Oh, fuck, baby. The dynamic duo, baby.
I mean, this is a guy who carried himself with class and dignity. When you're a people person like that, people respect that, and people appreciate that.
Give me the hot sauce, Neil, fuck! Give me the hot sauce!
You know, and he allowed me to be in those special moments in Bulls history. He allowed me the freedom to be me, and I owe him a lot to my success.
The great thing about that duo is Stacy truly respects Neil.
When you broadcast, much like when you're a player, the people you work with become your family. He's very caring, and he really does invest his time and life into his friends and his people.
Neil has always had great humility. He doesn't need to be the center of attention. He's a great friend and really proud that he came here when he did and that he had the career that he did and that we're recognizing him. He's a good man.
Rose bobbing and weaving, scooping and scoring.
He's a Hall of Fame announcer for sure.
Some voices do not end with the buzzer.
The Bulls win at the buzzer!
They echo.
Here comes Rose.
They live on.
With 5 and 2 tenths left.
He wasn't just the voice of the Bulls.
Oh my goodness.
He was the voice of Chicago. For calls that defined eras.
Rose for 3.
Jordan, top of the key, kaboom!
Scotty, free try, kaboom!
For the kabooms that shook the city.
White again. Come on. Wide open. Come on.
Because some voices never fade.
Oh, he was dogged. He had a determination about him, and you knew he was an accurate shooter.
It has come down to this possession.
They want Michael to get a full head of steam.
Well, Pippen got the step. Dumps it out to Horace. Here's Paxson. Paxson for 3.
I had a couple of teams interested in me. It was Phoenix, Atlanta, and the Bulls. And a guy that I didn't know by the name of Jerry Krause kept calling me, and I was the type of guy that I was always looking for the most security I could get because I wanted to survive in the league. And so when the Bulls offered me a 3-year deal and they had to buy my rights from San Antonio for $50,000, I signed in with Chicago. And I've thought often, especially as I've gotten older, about what that's meant to my career. I couldn't have foretold anything that was going to happen for myself that day.
That guy, man, he had fire. People always ask me, when you play with Michael Jordan, what do you better have? I said, first of all, you better have tough skin. More importantly, you better have his trust. And John Paxson had both of those things. His work every day showed me who he was. John Paxson had a motor, he was highly conditioned, he had toughness, and he could shoot the out of the ball.
John became Michael's probably favorite teammate to play with, I would say. He was Michael's rocket.
They gave us time to grow together, and we had the two young guys in Horace and Scotty that were growing into the players they would become. The trade for Bill Cartwright gave us, kind of an identity and some toughness too. There was a trust that was born over all those years of getting beat up by Detroit.
This is a war down in there. Dumars and Paxson.
Paxson traffic Thomas.
Sends it back to John Paxson.
Thomas squeezing through.
This dude's an animal. He's a beast. He never backed down from a challenge. One of the toughest guys I've ever played with, hands down. He'd take charges. He'd get elbowed in the face. There were times where Isaiah would throw elbows at him in the face, and John would just eat him. Eat him.
And toughness is a skill. it's not an intangible. Pax had that in spades.
Michael is always the guy that you would think to take the big shots. This is Michael Jordan time. Sometimes it's not Michael Jordan time.
The Bulls looking for their first ever NBA championship.
Game 5 in 1991, clinching the championship. Probably the only time I saw Michael Jordan nervous at the end of that Game 5 when the Bulls were on the verge of clinching a championship. And famously, Phil Jackson pulls him aside and says, "Who's open, Michael?"
You're double teaming you every time you put the ball on the floor, Michael. Who's open?
Who's open? Who's open?
I said John's open. Pax is open.
John Paxson is open.
So get him the ball.
Game 6. Paxson, yes! John Paxson again! And the Bulls lead.
Bang, bang. He made all those jump shots in a row and carried the fourth quarter for the Bulls.
You watch those highlights. I mean, he was shooting the ball outside. He was driving. It was, it was a special moment.
And the Chicago Bulls have won their first ever NBA championship.
When the pressure is on and the world is watching, who do the players trust? Pax was one of those guys that you could trust. That trust, it doesn't come easily. You have to earn that.
I'm just glad I was able to step up, and I got the shots and I knocked them down. I'm happy for the guys in this room and the coaching staff. We put in a lot of hard work to get here.
Basketball's a team game. It always has been, it always will be.
13 and 6/10 seconds remaining in the fourth. The Suns by 2. It will be Chicago in possession.
It kind of was just symbolic of what we had become as a team, that all 5 of us touched the ball.
Michael to get a full head of steam, try to keep him in the middle of the floor.
Well, Pippen got to snap. Here's Paxson for 3. Yes! The Bulls take a 1-point lead, and Phoenix calls for time with 3 and 9/10 seconds.
One of the greatest plays in Chicago Bulls history. There was no doubt when he shot the ball that it was going in.
He doesn't make that shot that go into Game 7 in Phoenix. And now not only anything could happen, but you're on the road in Phoenix with that team having momentum coming back down 3-1.
Guys made the right play, given how the defense played. When Barkley dove at Scotty, he made a decision. When Horace caught it and there was some pressure around him, he made a decision. That's what good teams do.
To have that grit and that toughness and that heart to be able to take that shot and nail it.
Everybody know how Michael Jordan is, to trust somebody with the last shot. He was a player that is always going to keep himself ready for the moment, no matter what. And that's when the work comes, that's when the unseen hours come into play.
When he had that ball, I had a lot of confidence in the guy. We've been together for so long. He's always knocked in big shots for us when we needed it. This goes into his repertoire as another shot that means a lot to us.
You're always ready. I mean, in the moment, you're not thinking about what could happen. You're just reacting to what is in front of you. So it's so long ago. I don't remember. All I know is every time I see it now, the shot still goes in, and that's all that matters.
Way to go, Pac. This is a dream. What can I say? Maybe we were the ones destined to win after all. What a great feeling. I can't describe what I feel.
Clutch. I mean, this guy's hit some of the biggest shots in Chicago Bulls history.
I think his devotion to the game.
Pax knew what it took to win a championship, and he was trusted when the game was on the line. And that, to me, is who John Paxson is.
John Paxson represents the Bulls and the community and the franchise as well as anybody ever has.
There is no one who cares more about the Chicago Bulls than John. He bleeds Chicago Bulls red.
John was a guy you could trust and understand he was going to do the right thing out there on the floor.
Such a high character human being.
He's passionate. He cares.
He took his shot on me, believed that I could be a leader in the locker room as a young man.
There's nothing he hates more than losing. Nothing. I can't thank him enough for the opportunity that he gave me as a 19-year-old kid. Been there, he knows what success looks like. He knows what it takes to win in this league, and for him to mentor me.
You'll never hear me say a bad word about JP. JP's my man. I'm a ride or die with John Paxson.
I think you can say this is my Hall of Fame, and I know I'm lucky, incredibly humbled and honored. I never thought when I came here in October of '85 that I'd be sitting here today, 40 years later, still caring as much as I do about the organization and the success of it.
Chicago Bulls, the best basketball you could find. And I tell you what, I'm going to bring you the best of the best. So let's go to Norm's tapes.
And also at guard, number 2 from St. Francis, the third-year Norm Van Lier.
Norm was really one of the most remarkable figures in Chicago basketball.
You talking about Norm Van Lier, you talk about gritty, hard-nosed. They don't make him like that anymore, man.
The most overlooked team in Bulls history is the early 70s Bulls. In great part, the point of the spear was Norm Van Lier.
Memories of the Chicago Bulls is Norm Van Lier's teams. My friend and I used to play basketball in our basements. There was no such thing as little tight baskets, so it was like a laundry basket, and we'd take our socks and we would shoot, last second shots, and I'd always pretend I was Norm Van Lier.
He was 6'1" and 165, overlooked, went to a small college in Pennsylvania.
And then worked his way up in the NBA as a third-round draft pick.
The crowd on its feet, literally at the beginning. It's Van Lier, shoots and hits.
In those days, it was a real physical game, so his arms are always on the opposing player.
Fast, tough, plays all 48 minutes.
Just that attitude that you wanted, he's tough and competitive.
Van Lier comes out with it. He'll go home alone. Look at that single.
He was the guy who played all over the court.
He would dog you, he would fight you. He was concerned about one thing only, and that's winning.
He was that type of player that put his hard hat on and he went to work. He had that pride about him to stop his opponent.
His unselfishness, his hard work, his defense, it was just fun to watch.
Crowd is standing. Crowd is roaring. 5, 4, 3, on the timer, 2, Van Lier. That's it.
Were you worried about this one? Well, in a way, I guess, because it's all over if you lose. I just create action, and this is what I do best.
People still talk about him to this day. When they talk about the best defensive players in the history of the league, the best defensive backcourts.
His pairing with Jerry Sloan, I would argue the most fun backcourt pairing in the history of the NBA, because those two guys were absolutely fearless.
Van Lier on the baseline. Look out, he'll go in there. Here's Sloan. Got it. Sloan has it outside. Van Lier has a shot.
These were the guys who would jump in front of Wilt, so Wilt would commit an offensive foul and yell him in his face, "I ain't scared of you, come on!"
He and Sloan, they developed this reputation as a lockdown backcourt that you couldn't score against. They would make you play hard, like Norm said, 48 minutes of intensity, and they brought that to the court every night.
The way that he played with grit and grime, he and Jerry Sloan, that transferred over to his broadcasting career as well.
Welcome to Toyota Bulls Postgame Live. I'm Luke Stuckmeyer. To my left, our experts, 2 former NBA stars, former Bulls, Norm Van Lier and Kendall Gill, guys.
You knew when he was talking that it was always the truth. His feelings were on his sleeve. 48 minutes of intensity. He used to say that all the time. But he meant it because that's the way he played.
You have to play 48 minutes of intensity. 48 minutes. Oh, 48, baby.
We all have our perspective. And Norm, his perspective was his time playing.
Competitiveness that he had as a player carried over to his broadcasting career. And I think his genuineness, his honesty, and his willingness to say things that maybe some in the business would be reluctant to do really made him very popular.
Let's understand the crux of where this is coming from. This guy's heart is the Chicago Bulls.
I never really felt like he was a broadcaster. I felt like he was just a guy talking basketball, and the camera happened to be on him.
I was just in rehearsal with Mick Jagger, working on my moves, for the up-and-coming concerts. I need some turn signals. See, can you drive with those glasses?
It was a pleasure for me to work with him. Even the lessons that he taught me I still use today.
One of the greatest human beings in the world, my friend, Norman Van Lier.
This is the first time in all my life in Chicago I ever received any award. You just don't know how much it means to me to be received by these people here in Chicago.
Norm really epitomized the people of Chicago. People really were able to identify with Norm as one of their own.
What made Norm special was his determination, the love that he had for the game of basketball and his teammates and the city.
I always had a lot of respect for his commitment to this organization.
He had such a big, kind heart. I only had a chance to work side by side with him for 4 years, but I'll carry those memories with me for the rest of my life.
think people should remember Norm as kind of the floor leader of the first great Chicago Bulls teams.
I mean, Norm Van Lier is one of the seminal figures in the history of Chicago basketball. Norm's commitment to the game, commitment to the Bulls, commitment to the community, the way he played, reflected everything about what the Bulls franchise wanted to be. But Norm meant to basketball in Chicago as much as anybody.
San Francisco, 7-1, Bill Cartwright.
Well, Bill Cartwright has proven to be the major surprise here in Chicago.
You needed the big man, you needed the center. Bill Cartwright filled that role.
I'm pretty much a no-nonsense kind of guy.
Bill does, gets it to Michael.
I knew my role. My role is the guard, and just be able to rock and roll from there.
The final piece of the Bulls championship was Bill Cartwright, and it was not a very popular trade at the time. Charles Oakley was Michael's closest friend on the team, but more than that, he was his protector against the antics of the Detroit Pistons.
We were up against some teams that were very physical. The Detroit Bad Boys were our nemesis, and Bill fit the bill. He was the enforcer, and he took care of the back of the lane. He was the one guy that stood up and played hard against them.
Cartwright just slammed his hand into the bag.
Now Jack Madden has a short fuse.
Once we got Bill Cartwright, I knew for a fact if you're a guard, you come in that paint, Bill is going to knock your ass down.
Been charged against Bill Cartwright and Isaiah Thomas. They have both been ejected. They've both been tossed. Cartwright and Thomas have been thrown out.
If some guy whacks you, you try to go after him. That's just the name of the game. We both got tossed, and I went in and had a beer.
We needed someone who could guard a Bill Lambert, who could guard a Patrick Ewing. So he was, the man in the middle.
Ewing and Grant have some words, trying to cool it down.
Bill and Patrick beat the crap out of each other in the paint. They beat the crap out of each other. And Will used to get so upset, I'd put him in the game, and in about 2 minutes, he'd have 2 fouls. And he'd come over and say, Coach, I said, Will, you're going to have to earn that respect that Bill's got.
The scoop won't go, but the tip in by Cartwright. Penetration caused the problems. Ewing turned his back to Cartwright.
Clee always had your back. We never had an altercation where Bill didn't step in and put his chest into an opponent because he wasn't going to let them, intimidate us.
The most intriguing thing about Bill is that damn voice of his.
I'm just a guy that loves the game, and I just show up every day, and I want to get rings, and I want to get paid.
Jordan changed his mind. Cartwright, yes, and it counts.
I was going to be who I am. If something was on the line, I was going to speak up because that's how I learned.
Cartwright. Boy, what touch for a big 7'1".
Cartwright. Hey, Big Bill on a trailer. Cartwright. Yes. The Chicago defense continues to do it.
We were a defensive team first. Phil Jackson was a defensive coach first.
Bill was that nail that we needed to get over the hump.
Think of the Bulls offense, you think of Michael and Scotty, Paxson, Horace. Bill doesn't get the credit he deserves. Without a good low post center, that offense doesn't work. And Bill Cartwright is probably the most important piece in that triangle offense.
Even at my weakest, I knew I had someone who had my back.
Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen, these were young players, and they needed someone to look up to. In the celebration, Michael went up to Bill and said, they were right. We needed you. We couldn't have won without you.
Their goal was to win a championship, and it took us some time, about half a season, to take off. But once we did, we took off.
We wouldn't have been a championship team without him. I always had great respect for Bill. As you get further away from those times, My respect for him has grown because I see what his presence meant to our team.
He was a father figure to me and BJ. We're just straight out of college, 22-year-old kids. And, he always made sure we're eating right, getting into bed on time on the road. I mean, it's honestly like having your dad.
The players looked up to Bill as a leader. He was quiet, but he was effective.
Quiet warrior. He didn't have a lot to say, but you knew around the team, especially for his nickname.
We called him Teach because he always teaches.
It was easy to overlook all the other parts to that team. But if you don't have Bill Cartwright on this roster, you don't win. You may win one championship, but maybe not three.
Part of his leadership was there's more to life than just basketball. But while you're playing basketball, you better give it your all.
It was a rebirth coming here to Chicago, and to be able to overcome the obstacles of the Cleveland Cavaliers and then the dreaded Detroit Pistons, to overcome them. We were the biggest show in town, so it was a lot of fun.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Billy C. Baby Bill Cartwright.